Hello, I'm Glenn Vonk, and I have a business development role with the National Council for Entrepreneurial Tech Transfer, or NCET2. Previously was a PhD synthetic organic chemist. My first jobs were making pilot lot drugs for human and animal trials for the National Institutes of Health. After that, I worked in medical devices for almost 29 years at Becton Dickinson. This included diagnostics, materials, drug delivery, and I was managing director of Becton Dickinson's life science R&D in Singapore for 5 years, which included managing director of an incubator at that facility. I returned to the United States and since then have been working in this business development role with NCET2. And I'd like to tell you now about NCET2, which I believe is a very exciting organization for anyone interested in commercializing exciting technologies from our universities. NCET2 was founded about 14 years ago out of George Washington University. It was founded on the premise that exciting things were happening in startups, that commercialization of university technology in startups was likely to be a very promising venue for both financial and societal returns stemming from university research. The focus of NCET2 over its 14 years has continued to be on startups, and this differentiates it from other organizations that target universities in the United States that you may be aware of. NCET2, in its travels with universities and startups, encountered an interest on the federal legislative side in how technology becomes commercialized. In other words, senators and representatives who are interested in creating jobs in the United States asked NCET2, how is it that universities commercialize research? How is it that corporates access university research? And what about research that's done in federal labs? What's happening there? And so we began to investigate this in our network, which consists of approximately 150 universities across the continental United States, over 50 large Fortune 300, Fortune 500 corporate entities, and a large diversity of technology verticals, and then over 200 startups that participate in each one of our demo days. From this, we developed a view of the ecosystem as it is currently functioning. That model indicates that right now there is a significant degree of fragmentation and in the ecosystem. Many startups are being created, but many of these startups are not aligned to business needs because they don't understand those needs. Many businesses are seeking to access startups but cannot find startups that are aligned to those needs, and they would work with startups if they could find startups that were aligned to those needs. Oftentimes, each of these entities is skeptical of the capability of the other entity in being able to create startups. Universities wonder if corporates are really interested in their startups. University technology transfer organizations oftentimes struggle with making their startups visible to corporates. So NCET2 appreciated that and created the Corporate Commercialization Center as a venue to efficiently connect each of these entities together and begin a discussion around developing and enhancing this model. From that discussion, we were able to map out how university and federal lab technology is commercialized through the creation of startups, through the development of innovation districts, which have the startup. They have often a commercialization expert, often a corporate presence, and access to university infrastructure and expertise. That needs to be connected to investors and corporate experts that can guide the progress of that startup. Often that requires then additional investment by private investors, leading to either an exit or the formation of a stand-up successful company. This model was vetted across the United States in New York, Philadelphia, and California by each of the members of the network that I described to you previously. We noticed that after the first demo day, when we were able to identify startups, that oftentimes their development still was not accelerated because the fragmentation in the university systems continues, and the success of those startups is dependent upon how knowledgeable the particular members of that startup are about navigating their particular ecosystem. So this is the state of the ecosystem in the United States presently. In that context, NCET2 has developed some programs to accelerate this development and to increase the potential for investors and corporates as well as for their startups. The first program that I would like to describe to you is what we call the IP to Startup program. The IP to Startup program basically allows technology transfer offices and universities to profile technologies and intellectual property that they own. And when they profile that, then it takes that profile in a non-confidential statement to corporates for review. Corporates are given then the opportunity to provide feedback to that university. And in the event that that intellectual property looks promising, it raises the priority and the incentive for the university to commercialize that particular intellectual property, perhaps with the participation of the interested corporate reviewers. So that's the IP to Startup program. The University Startup Demo Day is the next program which works with startups that have already been created and seeks to form the connections between those startups and between interested investors and corporates. The problem that corporates often had was not being able to find startups that were aligned to their business and strategy needs. This required corporates to travel to many universities or to attend meetings and have numerous long meetings, very long days at these conferences with these startups, most of these meetings not being productive. So the University Startup Demo Day avoids all of that by, again, having the startups submit information in a format where corporates can quickly review that information. Within a few minutes. They'll know if there's interest, and if they want to have a follow-up conversation with a startup, then they can do so at any time. They're not limited by any process or any events within NCET2 as an organization. So the corporate partners find this to be the most efficient way to access startups. The startups have access to the whole corporate network within their technology verticals, our business verticals. And so there's a significant incentive for the startups to offer that information to us. And the added incentive that at the demo day, the highest rated startups have the opportunity to pitch to investors at the demo day, and that recognition also raises the incentive for the regional investors to invest in them, providing additional leverage for their commercialization. The University Startups Demo Day has been extremely successful, and we receive very good feedback from the university startup officers, from the industry partners, and from the investors that this is a very attractive deal flow for them. Finally, we have a Startup Development Officer program, which is designed to work with early stage startups which are not quite ready for significant investment, and to guide them to a place where they have business relevance and where significant risk factors have been reduced to the extent where they warrant increased investment. And those startups then can be highlighted in a roadshow to a university angel network or other investors. And this roadshow is particularly attractive and highlights startups that are farther along in their development and ready for significant investments. The startups tell us that they are very pleased with the exposure that they receive from the demo day. The corporates tell us that the demo day is the most efficient way that they have to identify new startups and leverage their internal R&D. So why should you be interested in participating in the demo day or developing a relationship with NCET2? Well, first of all, the deal flow. The deal flow from NCET2 consists of startups that are accelerated in their development from early stage to late stage, that they do this with the guidance of experienced professionals, and that they do this in a way that's aligned with startups, with corporates that are already interested in purchasing those startups are the services and materials that they provide. So to some degree, and as much as you can imagine, the exit is built in from the beginning because of the vetting that the corporates and the investors do at an early stage. Secondly, the diverse stages from embryonic to mature allow you to invest at any stage that you're comfortable with and to engage where you're comfortable, whether it's early or late. The acceleration through the support infrastructure lends credence to the potential success of the startups. that they are very likely to succeed and develop a viable business opportunity for you as a financial investor. And finally, NCET 2 provides very efficient access to a large number of startups and corporates so that you can see for yourself the reality of what I'm describing to you in this video. Rub shoulders with them, talk to them, find out for yourself what the reality is for each of these startups, get to know their management teams, and access the other investor networks that are starting to gather around NCET 2 as a particularly efficient way for them to do business. So I'd like to thank you for your time. It's my privilege to talk to you today, and I hope to see you at a future conference.